Good evening and welcome to Mrs. Spencer's Math Lab. Thank you for tuning in to me today. Because of technical difficulties, we're a little late, but it's better late than never. So while I'm getting started, those of you who were with me last week, I'd like for you to do this little quiz that's on the board. I'd like for you to put the decimal points in the correct places. Do not use your calculators. Use what you learned last week in the lab. And those of you who are coming for the first time, I'd like to say welcome. And I'd like to let you know that all the videos that I have made are on YouTube and also on Facebook. And I invite you to look at them. And you may look at them more than once if needed. And do the work, do the practice work, so that you can learn the skills that I have tried to teach you. All right. Those of you who are for the first time, you probably need to hit those little arrows so that you can make the picture larger and can see the board better. And turn your sound up. I have my sound up. And we'll be good to go. Those of you who are for the first time, I'd like for you to know that I insist that you think positively about math. Math is not hard. It's easy. It works from principle to principle, from concept to concept, from skill to skill. It's all really connected. And once you get the foundation, you're good to go. Parents, don't tell your children that you never were good in math. That's you. That's not them. And that's just giving them an excuse to say, my mom wasn't good, so I'm not good. And it's not really hereditary. So let's begin for today. You've had a little time. Do not use your calculators. I want you to determine from your lesson last week where the decimal points belong in each of these products. All right, I have already done the multiplication for you so that you didn't need to use your calculators and so that we could speed up the time as well. All right, we know that 2 times 5 is 10, but this is 2 times 5/10, so where does the decimal point go? Okay, there were two ways to look at it. It's 2 times 5 over 10. Which is what? 5/10. All right, and that means is 2 times 5 over 10, which is 10 over 1. Okay. All right, but the decimal point goes here. All right. That's like saying 2 times a half, because 5/10 is a half. So 2 times 1/2 is 1. All right, so let's look at the second one. 5 times 2 over 100. So that's 10 hundredths. Decimal point 1, 2, 1, 2. So that's 10 hundredths. All right, the next one is 9 hundredths. And learn to read these decimals. 9 hundredths times 12 hundredths, and the product of the numbers is 108. Where does the decimal point belong? How many decimal places do we need? All right, we've said the easy way to do it, rather than turning it into the fraction form, is to just count the decimal places that you have. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, and we need a 0 to make 4. So that's 108 10,000ths. All right, the next one is 17 hundredths times 9 thousandths. The product of the numbers is 153. How many decimal places do we need? Let's count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, and we need 2 zeros. All right. So that's 153 what? 5 places is 100,000ths. All right, and the last one is 2 5/10 times 2 5/10. And the product of the numbers is 25 times 25 is 625. And how many decimal places? All right, we have 1 here, and 1 plus 1 is 2. 1, 2. All right. So what we need to do too is sort of use some little estimation so that we won't get ridiculous answers. We already learned how to round off. So what we can also do is check our work to see if it makes sense by rounding off. All right, I pray that you got all of these correct if you were with me last week. And if you were not, I invite you to look at the tape from last week so you will understand how we decide to put the decimal point in its correct place. The only difference between decimals and whole numbers is the decimal points. And each time we do a skill, we have to determine what happens to the decimal point. All right, so let's go on with today's lesson. We're going to today to do division of decimals. Division. We've done addition, subtraction, and multiplication. So today we're going to do division. And first we're going to start with dividing a decimal by a whole number. And let's take some easy numbers. And I tell teachers and parents, start your lesson with easy numbers so that the skill is not lost in the complication of the numbers. I was looking online today, and one person who was doing this very same lesson started with such big numbers. I'm sure students would have a problem with the numbers, that which would get in the way of learning the process. All right, so the first one is 9/10 divided by 3. All right. So we know if it was 9 divided by 3, the answer would be 3. So we can put a 3 up here. But the question is, what happens to the decimal point? That's the only difference in decimals and whole numbers. The division is the same. Well, this is very simple because the decimal point is just in the same position right over the decimal point here. So the result is 3/10. 3/10 times 3. 3 times 3 is 9. We won't go into that. That's easy division, and I purposely made it easy. So 9/10 divided by 3 is 3/10. All right, let's do another. 2 5/10 divided by 5. So let's do the division as if it were whole numbers. 25 divided by 5 is 5. And notice I put the 5 over 5, not over 2, because 5 will not divide into 2. So I can, just to be sure I get that, don't get that confused, I could put a 0 there, and the decimal point goes right over the other decimal point. How simple can that be? All right, let's do another. 4 all right. So the division is just like division with whole numbers. 12 divided by 4. 12 divided by 4 is 3. All right. And the decimal point goes here. So what do we do for the other places? We use a 0 for place value there. We use a 0 to occupy those places. We have to have 3 because this has 3 behind the decimal point. And so the 0 are placeholders here. All right, so the result is 3 thousandths. All right, we'll do a few more of these. I don't think we need to do a lot of these because it's just simple. And I kept simple numbers so that you can do it. All right, so let's do this one. Right, 1 2/10 divided by 10. All right, I'm going to let you work with that, and I'm going to put a couple others on. Okay. And I'll put a little challenging one on next, but let's do these. All right, because all we're doing here is dividing the numbers and placing a decimal point right over the decimal point in the dividend. And that's what that's called, the dividend. Inside the house, that's the dividend. This is the divisor, and the result is called the quotient. So the quotient is what we're finding today to find where the decimal point goes. So we can already place the decimal point. Okay. And I'll suggest you do that first, because sometimes we forget to do that at the end if we don't do that first. All right, so let's do the division. All right, and I think I need to bring this one out a little bit so we have room. All right, so we have 10 into 1 2/10. Decimal point is here. 10 will go into 12 once. 1 times 10 is 10. Subtract. We have 2. All right, so we don't, at this point, with decimals, we don't stop there. We put another 0 here and continue. Bring that down. And that's now 20. 10 will go into 20 2 times. So the quotient is 12 hundredths. All right, and the last one here, put the decimal point right over the decimal point. 0, 7 will go into 0, 0, 0. 7 will not go into 4, so that's another 0. 7 will go into 49, 7 times. All right, and 7 times 7 is 49, so we don't need to go take that one all the way out. All right, so what we're doing here is just learning what happens to the decimal point. Because again, the only difference in decimals and whole numbers is the decimal point. So how easy can that be? All right, I'm going to give you a little challenge one that requires a little more work. See, we start off with easy numbers and learn the process, and then we can get a little more difficult. All right, let's do 9. And we're dividing 49 8/10 by 9. All right, I'll give you a moment to do that. Again, the only difference is the decimal point. So deal with that first. And the rest is just like whole numbers, like dividing 498 by 9. Can't get more simple than that. I've already said math is not hard. It's hard when you make it hard, but it's not really hard. All right, let's see what you got. All right. 9 won't go into 4, but 9 will go into 49. How many times? 5. 5 times 9 is 45. All right. And we have 4 left over. Bring down the 8. All right, 9 in the 48. Again, it's 5. 5 times 9 is 45. And 3 left over when we subtract. All right. Now, again, in decimals, we don't just stop when we use up 1 or 2 digits that we have. We keep going until something happens. So let's see what's going to happen here. 9 will go into 30. How many times? 3. 3 times 9 is 27. And we get 3 as a remainder. All right. If I put another 0 there, it would be 9 into 30 again, which will be 3 and 27 and 3. So what do we notice? We're going to keep getting 3 and we're going to still get 30. And so the 3s are going to keep going on and 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 on forever. So we have 2 choices here. If we were doing a problem and we needed a certain number of places, we could call this 5 and 53 hundredths. Or if we needed something else, we could call this 5 and 533 thousandths. Or we could just write it as 5 and 53 hundredths with a bar over the 3. And what does that mean? That means 3 continues on and on and on and on and on and on and on. So when we're dividing decimals, this is what we do. We keep dividing until something starts to repeat or it either terminates. That means we get an answer right away. All right, so this was just a little more challenging. And this is a fifth grade problem. This is a 5th grade problem. All right, so this is what we do here. And it's like division. If you can divide whole numbers, you certainly can divide decimals. And this is when the divisor is a whole number. The decimal point is right over the decimal point there. All right, so now let's look at another type. All right, again, that was when you have and let's put it up here so we remember. In here, out here, we have a whole number as the divisor. I'm going to do this for the number. And inside the dividend, we have a decimal. All right, so that's what we have already done. So now let's do a decimal. Divided by a decimal. All right, so that's what we're going to do now. Again, it's just like dividing whole numbers, except what happens to the decimal point. All right, so let's do one. And as I say, we always start out by taking a very simple problem so that you can see what's going on and not get hooked up with the numbers. All right, let's say 9/10 divided by 3/10. Okay. Well, what we really do here is, since we already know how to divide a decimal by a whole number, we get this in that same form. That's the only thing we do. We get this in the form of dividing a whole number into a decimal. So what do we need to do then? Now remember, a decimal is a fraction. And whatever we do to the numerator, we have to do to the denominator. And so let's do this in the form of a numerator and a denominator. All right, the numerator is 9/10. The denominator is 3/10. All right, so let's multiply that by 10. And we have to do that to both of them. If we multiply this by 10, we'll get 9. And if we multiply this by 10, we get 3. Okay. So that's basically what we do. We're multiplying by whatever is here. This is tenths. So to make this a whole number, we're going to have to multiply this by 10. So that just moves the decimal point behind it. So it looks like this. And because we multiplied this by 10, we multiplied the 9/10 by 10, and that's 9, and the decimal points behind it. All right. All right. So, and of course we can do this with or without the decimal point. So all we have done now is to change this problem by multiplying the numerator and denominator by a power of 10, so that we now have the same situation of dividing by a whole number. And that's the only adjustment we make. So now we know where the decimal point goes if we need it here. But this is just 3 into 9, and the answer is what? 3. So this is what it would look like. This is what we would do on our paper. And so the decimal point would be behind if we want to put a decimal point here. Questions? All right. If there are questions, then of course you can use the technology to ask me a question. All right. Let's go to another one. Let's do 4/10 is the divisor, and 1 and 2/10. 1 and 2/10. All right. We want to get it in the form of a whole number, a decimal divided by a whole number. So we're going to move this, which is equivalent to multiplying by 10. And we're going to move this, the same one spot, which is equivalent to, and we know the decimal point goes there. All right. And now we just divide the numbers. 12 divided by 4 is 3. All right. And 3 times 4, of course, is 12, and there is no remainder. All right. Do not use your calculators on these. These are too simple for that. And, of course, I do not like it that we use them so early in our schools, because that means students now don't have to really learn to divide. And that should not be, because there are some questions on tests that do not allow you to use calculators. So you got to learn to be the calculator. All right, so let's go to another. And so only adjustment we're making here is we're getting these problems in the form so that it's a whole number dividing a decimal. All right, so let's do 5/100ths and let's have our dividend be 5. Make it a little interesting. So that's 5 divided by 5/100ths. All right. Again, we want to change this. So every time we move one space, we are multiplying by 10. And I showed you there. So this is 10/100. So we're moving this 2 places. Now we have 5. All right. The decimal point is understood here. And we're moving this 2 places. So we don't have any digits, so we have to put some zeros here. 1, 2. All right. So now we are dividing 500 by 5. All right. So let's do that. We get 1, 0, 0. I'm not going to do all that extra stuff because we know if we divide anything by 0, we're going to get 0. So these are zeros. So the answer is 100. Isn't that easy? So all we make is an adjustment, and the adjustment is we get it back in the form of a whole number, a decimal divided by a whole number. And whatever makes the divisor a whole number, we must do that, because if we change one part of a fraction, we have to change the other part as well, so that we have equivalent fractions. All right, let's do another. Okay, let's do one, make it a little more interesting. Now that we know what we're doing. 8/10 is the divisor, and we have 7 and 3/10. All right. So let's see if you can do that one. Remember, we want to get it in the form of the whole number, and that can be a decimal. All right. And so we check it out from the divisor. Whatever makes the divisor a whole number, because that's where we want the whole number. Now, it may make this a whole number as well. Let's change this. I think I'll put the decimal point here. Make it a little different. So let's divide 73/100ths by 8/10. All right? All right, so what makes this 8/10 a whole number? Multiplying it by 10. So that means you move the decimal point one place. You do the same thing here and put the decimal point there right away. Now we're ready to divide 73 by 8. All right, let's finish that for me. The important part that we're doing here that's new is not the division, but it's adjusting the problems with the decimal points, because these are decimals. All right, so let's see what you got here. All right, we have 8 will not go into 7. 7 is less, okay. 8 will go into 73. How many times? Okay, let's see if you can finish that for me. Let's see if you can finish that problem. And don't stop if it doesn't come out when you use the 7 to 3. Remember, you keep going until it either starts to repeat or it terminates. That means it stops and it has no remainder. Okay? All right, put some answers on the board for me so that I can see that you're doing this correctly. But the only new thing is the decimal point. And again, when we divide a whole number into a decimal, the decimal point goes right up over the decimal point in the dividend. So we create the same situation here, and we want now a whole number, and this decimal. So we always go back to this form. And how easy can that be? It's really not hard, is it? All right, let's go. So 73 divided by 8 is what? 9. That's 72. We subtract. We get 1. We need a 0 here because it didn't come out evenly. Bring that down. It's 10. 8 and a 10. Once. 1 times 8 is 8. We have 2 left. Still didn't come out, and it's not repeating yet. So we bring that down. And that's 20. 8 into 20. 2 times. 2 times 8 is 16. And we have 4 left. Still has not terminated, nor is it repeating. So we add another 0 and bring that down. And we have 40. 8 into 40 is 5. 5 times 8 is 40. And there is no remainder. So we have a terminating decimal because it came out without a remainder. Our division came out without a remainder. All right, so this is 9,125 10,000ths. How easy is that? All right, so now what have we done so far? We've learned to divide decimals first by whole numbers. The only adjustment we have to make is with the decimal point. And we put the decimal point right over the decimal point in our quotients, which is our answer. When we get a decimal divided by a decimal, we get that in the form of a whole number dividing into a decimal. And then we do the same thing. How easy is that? All right, so I hope you understand how we did that and why we did it, so that we can be efficient in multiplying decimals. So we learned to add them, and adding them is adjustment with the decimal point. What is the adjustment? All the decimal points are lined up, and the numbers are placed around it. All right, subtraction, all the decimal points are in a straight line. Multiplication, we multiply the numbers and count the number of decimal places. And we put them in the number going from right to left. And division, if we have a whole number, we merely put the decimal point right over the decimal point in our quotient. Or if it's a decimal, we transform that, and we actually multiplying when we move that decimal point. We're not just shifting something. We're actually multiplying. Because I like to always use math processes as a reason. Math answers. We don't put, we don't change, we don't switch. We're doing something. Yes, we are moving this, but we're actually multiplying by 10. If it was hundredths out here, we're actually multiplying by 100. If it was thousands out there, we'd be actually multiplying by 1,000. All right, so I'm going to put one of each type here and see if we can do these. All right, I'm going to add. Okay. All right, I'm not making them difficult. I just want you to see if you can set up each of these operations. right? Multiply. Making the numbers very simple. Because I'm not interested in the numbers as I am the adjustments with the decimal points. And divide. Okay. I have to give you two of these so that you have each type. All right. Okay, let's make it a little interesting. All right, so I'll give you a moment to do this. Remember, decimals are the only difference is the decimal point. And we have learned what to do with the decimal point in each of these operations. And that's the only thing that makes this different from whole numbers, adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing whole numbers. So I hope you are proficient in adding, subtracting, and multiplying whole numbers. Learn your tables. And if you don't know them, your multiplication tables, when you get to division, it makes division a little difficult. Learn them. But if you don't know them, the easy way to learn them is to start just writing them, and you're just adding each time you're adding the same number, because that's what multiplication is. If you're doing your fours, it's 4 plus 4 is 8, plus 4 is 12, plus 4 is 16, and so on. So practice that. Parents, help your children, because they do have tests that determine how well they know those tables. And teachers do not spend a lot of time in class with them, but they expect them to do that at home. All right, let's see what you did. Let's see if I can make some space here somewhere to start. All right, I'm going to see if I can make a little space down here for the first problem. So we have 1, 2, 3. So I need 3 decimal points. Remember? Told you handle the decimal points first. So I'm adding, and my answer is going to be. Why did we say we do that? Because only like things can be added. And how do we make sure that our decimals are alike? We put them and line up the decimal points so that tenths will be under tenths, hundredths will be under hundredths, thousands will be under thousands, ones will be under ones, and so on. So now it's just a matter of putting the numbers up. So we have 4, and we have 16, and 5 tenths, and we have 3. I hope you place that 3 in the right place. All right, I suggested, and you don't have to do this if you don't need to, but it was just a suggestion that to keep from getting confused, that we put extra zeros there so all of the decimals will have the same number of places. It is not a necessary thing, but it does make it simpler for you to add sometimes. All right, so now the only problem is to do what we do with whole numbers, and that is add. 4 and 5, 9. 3 and 6, 9. 1 and nothing, 1. All right, so it's 19 and 9 tenths. And I hope this is what your problem looks like. Do not use the calculators for these. I made the numbers simple so you can do it. And we need to learn how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide whole numbers so that when we get to decimals, it will not be difficult. All right, the next problem is to subtract. And we have 17 Well, I'm going to do I'm going to model what I ask you to do. I have a number here, and the answer here, and we're subtracting. All right, so we have 17 and 800ths minus 6 and 5/10. Again, if we like, we can put a 0 there. 2. Okay. And now we're ready to subtract. Everything is in its right position. The hundreds under hundreds, the tenths under tenths, the ones under ones, and of course the tenths we only have one. Okay, 8, 5, 13, so we put 1, and we have a 3 here, and 1 and 1 is 2, 23 and 58/100ths.
You subtracted.
Oh, I'm sorry. Talking and writing sometimes doesn't work. 1 minus 1 is what? Okay.
6.
All right, let's check. 8 and 0. 5 and 5 is 10. 4 and 6.
0.
All right, here. Oh my goodness, my talking and writing didn't work here. All right, let's go back to this. 8, I'm adding when we're subtracting. 8 minus 0 is 8. Okay, we need to get 1 from the 7. Wow, I really messed this up. I'm saying subtraction and adding. All right, so actually I need to get 1 from here, and that's 6. And this is 10 now. 5. And 6 minus 6 is 0. And 1 minus 0 is 1. Okay. So checking it, 8 plus 0 is 8. 5 and 5, 10. Carry 1. 1 and 6, 7. 1 and 0, 1. We can always check our addition. And had I not been reminded by the person who's here, my husband who's here, making sure I do this correctly, I would have checked it and found out that I was adding instead of subtracting. All right, don't you do that. So please do not model that. All right, let's go to the multiplication. All right, multiply. All right, so we have 400ths times 500ths. All right, so we have 0, 4, and 0, 5 times. Multiply the numbers. 4 times 5 is 20. All right, now we've done the multiplication. So now we count the number of decimal places. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have a total of 4 decimal places here. So we need 4 here. 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's 20 10,000s. All right. And the division. And as I said, I make the numbers easy because I'm interested in seeing, do you have the process? Then the numbers can get harder when we want to challenge you more. All right, this time we're dividing 36 by 6. 6 is already a whole number, so the decimal point goes right here. 6 will not divide into 3. Well, we can put our 0 here. This is a placeholder. Sometimes we use that and sometimes we don't. 6 will go into 3. That's 0. We have put a 0 there. 6 into 36, 6 times. And 6 times 6 is 36. All right. So the quotient is 6 hundredths. Right? Okay, so our last problem, and I hope I'm not erasing too soon. All right, we're dividing 7 thousandths into 217 10,000ths. All right, the adjustment we make here is we want this divisor to be a whole number. So we're multiplying that by 10 times 10 times 10. So that's 1,000. Multiplying this by 1, 2, 3. So the decimal point goes here. And the rest is just whole number division. 7 into 217. All right, so what do we have? And I'm going to write it over so it'll be clearer. So this is what we now have. Now that we've done that 21 and 7/10. That's what we really have now. And the decimal point is right here. All right, so now we're on the side, 217, or we can do it right here. All right, 27 won't go into 2, but we're going to 21 3 times. 3 times 7 is 21. And we have no remainder. Bring down the 7. 7 will go into 7 one time. 1 times 7 is 7. And there's no remainder. Okay, if you got all of those correct, then you have mastered what we have done. Remember, the purpose of this today was to be certain that you know what happens to the decimal point in each of the operations with decimals. And that's the only difference in adding, subtracting, multiplying decimals than doing it for whole numbers. So you see everything connects up. Then when we get to percents, you're going to find that something that we've done here with decimals and fractions and are all going to connect up. So it's not a bunch of isolated things, but they all hang together, and they hang together beautifully. All right, so we have a few minutes more. And for the rest of that time, we've already learned how to write decimals as fractions, but we can also do the reverse. We can write fractions as decimals. But let's review writing fractions, decimals as fractions. All right, so we have all right, so I've used the same number each time to make it simple. So you should be able to write each one of these if you learn that place value chart that I gave you some weeks ago. All right, in a decimal is a fraction, we said, so we can write it in a fraction form. And the reverse is true. A fraction can be written in a decimal form. All right, so let's go back to review this. The numerator is the number behind the decimal, or to the right of the decimal point. So the numerator here is 3. The denominator is determined by the place of the last digit behind the decimal point. So we only have 1 here, so that's 3/10. All right, the next one, the numerator again is 3. And for each of these. And this time we have tenths, hundredths. So this denominator is 100. Remember that. The next one, all the numerators are 3, and I purposely did that because my emphasis is on your determining the denominator. We have tenths, hundredths, thousands. So we have 1,000. All right. Next one, the numerator again is 3. We have tenths, hundredths, thousands, 10,000s. So the denominator is 10,000. All right, the next one, the numerator again is 3. Tenths, hundredths, thousands, 10,000s, 100,000s. So the denominator is 100,000. And the last one, the numerator again is 3. The denominator is tenths, hundredths, thousands, 10,000s, 100,000s, millions. 1 million. All right, I hope you did not forget that. And if you did, that means you need to go back and look at the place value chart again, because this is going to come up again when we get to percents. And that's what I'm saying. We're not just learning isolated operations, isolated concepts, but the concepts go on and they mesh together. All right, now what I want to do now is to change, instead of from a fraction, a decimal to a fraction, I want to do a fraction to a decimal. All right, so let's see how we do that. And because we are getting close to time for me to stop, I'm going to allow you this time to use calculators if you need to. All right, but let's take some easy ones. Let's take 1/2. There are 2 ways we can do that. But I want to introduce something here that I said earlier, but you may have missed it. But now we have to use it. 1/2 or 1/2 means 1 divided by 2. This is a division line, an operational line. It's not just a line that separates the numerator and denominator, but it expresses division. So it's the numerator divided by the denominator. All right? So if you did that on your calculator, what did you get? 1 divided by 2. Okay? You should have gotten 5/10. Okay? Another way we could have done this, because 2 is a factor of 10, and all the denominators for decimals are powers of 10. And the first power of 10 is 10. So I look at this 2 and I see that it's a factor of 10. So I have 1/2, remember, for fractions. And so I can change this, express this as tenths, if I multiply the numerator and denominator by 5. Remember, if I multiply the denominator by 5, then I must multiply the numerator by 5. So I get 5/10. And now I know how to write that, because we've already learned how to write 5/10. Whichever one of those methods is easier for you, I would permit you to use. However, I will not always say that you can use the calculator, but just for sake of time today, I am saying that, because you should have been able to divide 1 by 2 without the calculator. All right, let's do another. Let's do 1/4. All right, now 1/4 is not a factor of 10. But it is a factor of 100. But it'd probably be easier. I would say it's easier for some of you to just divide. What do we divide? 1 divided by 4. Or if I write it the other way, it's 1 divided by 4. Let's put it in the right place. All right, so let's do this one. All right. 4 will not go into 1. Decimal point is right over decimal point. I need a 0 here. 4 into 10 twice. 2 times 4, 8. Subtract, we get 2. We still need to keep dividing. Put another 0. Bring it down. 4 into 20. 5 times. All right. So 1/4 is 25 hundredths. And some of these you need to learn because you're going to use them so much. 1/2 is 5 tenths or 50 hundredths. 1/4 is 25 hundredths. So 2/4 would be same as 1/2. 3/4 then would be 3 times this, which is 75 hundredths, and so on. So you're going to use these a little later, especially when we get to percents and start comparing all 3 percents, fractions, and decimals. All right, let's do, let's do 1/3. All right, I'm going to give you a moment to do that. 1/3. So that means 1 divided by 3. 1 divided by 3. All right, what did you get? So you should have gotten 3, 3, 3, and so on. All right, and again, I told you could just write that 0, and the bar over that tells me that the 3's keep going on and on forever, because that does not change the value of it. It only changed the appearance. All right, let's do 3/8. 3/8. All right, that means what? 3 divided by 8. 3/8 means 3 divided by 8. And if we write it in the other form, it's 3 divided by 8. All right, so I have written that 3 different ways, so that you can understand what it's saying. All right, so with your calculators, what did you get? All right, let's see. Now I'm going to do the long division. All right, so I have 3 on the inside, 8 on the outside, 0 here. I need the decimal point. All right, I need a 0. And that's 3. 3 times 8 is 24.
We'll call you back in a minute.
6 is the remainder. Did not come out evenly yet, so bring down the 0. 8 into 60. All right, 7. 7 times 8 is 56. Get a 4. Still did not come out yet, so we can keep adding zeros until we either see repeating or terminating. Terminating means ending. All right, 8 into 40, 5 times. 5/8, 40. All right, so 3/8 equals 375 thousandths. 375 thousandths. All right, our time is about up, and we've gone through the operations with decimals, and we reviewed changing decimals to fractions, and we added on changing fractions to decimals. To change a fraction to a decimal, we realized that the numerator over the denominator really expresses division of the numerator divided by the denominator. And this is the way we write it when we're going to do the long division. All right, I hope today has been fruitful for you, and I hope that you will do some practice on these. And later on in the year, I'm going to bring some questions that came off your SOLs using these same principles. But you need to do this in order to do the questions that they ask you to do on the SOLs. So have a great week. Practice makes perfect. And I'll see you next week, Mrs. Spencer's Math Lab.